Hello and welcome to Behind the Lines. I'm Diane Dayton. Today we're going to talk to two authors. We're going to find out what they've written and find out more about them. With us right now we have Mike Zielinski. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Diane.
You are a novelist, but you've been a writer and you've been many things in your life. But this is your first novel, Jack Daniels on the Rocks.
Fun title, right?
Yeah. So this is you. How long did this take you and how did this start?
Well, it actually took me a while to write, and I'm a fast writer, but the reason why it took me a while to write was I was so involved. I worked at a newspaper at the time, and I was involved in a lot of community projects, and I just didn't really have the time. So even though I haven't retired from working, when I retired from the Reading Eagle in 2015, I figured I'm going to finish the novel, because even though I was a columnist for many years, sports and general columnist, I always felt like to be fulfilled or complete as a writer, you should write a novel. So hence Jack Daniels on the Rocks.
So why Jack Daniels on the Rocks?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. You know, for many years I was covered pro football, and I was a big fan as an athlete of O.J. Simpson. And so when the O.J. Simpson trial hit, you know, he was accused of murder, I was one of those people at the time thought, not O.J., he couldn't do that. And I was the Metro editor at the paper at the time, worked second shift, so I was very involved in the trial. And I just thought it was interesting, the defense that was put on by his dream team, putting the whole police department on trial and focusing the DNA. I'm a Gemini. I'm also interested, and that's why I think so diverse. And not that I'm two-faced, but Geminis have split personalities at times. So in Jack Daniels on the Rocks, it's about John Daniels is a very successful criminal defense attorney who's been blessed with a great singing voice. His voice sounds just like Jim Morrison of the Doors. But the only person who ever heard it was his wife when he sang in the shower, because he was a little hesitant about cannibalizing or taking away his credibility by starting to sing in a cover band, with a cover band. Mm-hmm. And his wife wasn't very supportive of that. And I don't know if it was a midlife crisis. He's like in his 50s. His wife passes away. He's kind of bored. He decides to do it. And so the novel's about the stresses and of balancing two careers. Very successful criminal defense attorney, and then this aspiring rocker. Because he's so good, and because he has a local profile, and he hooks up with a very talented cover band, for those of us old enough to remember Cream, well, their title's a knockoff on that. Their name is Coffee Mate. And he gets a lot of publicity, and it balloons. And he winds up on YouTube, he winds up on local television, he winds up on network television. Suddenly he has a choice to make. Does he do music full-time or his law practice? In the meantime, he meets a very free-spirited young woman named Ashley Dupre, and he goes by Jack Daniels, the singer, John Daniels, the attorney. And he starts drinking Jack Daniels. That was not his drink of choice. But anyway, he decides to go, I don't want to give it away, he goes with the legal aspect, decides to put that on hold, go for his dream. Just as he does so, right afterwards, the crime of the century happens in his hometown. And with a slight delay in some recording and some touring dates, he decides to do both. So it's a comedy, it's a fun read, it's a fast read, but I believe, and people have told me this, is a page turner. There are dramatic elements. And getting back to O.J. Simpson, there are several trials in the book, but the climactic trial, the crime of the century, is very much based on the DNA part that the Simpson team did. The irony of it is, I started writing this long before the two recent television documentaries on O.J. Simpson, which I thought, well, this might be good for book sales because it's rekindling the interest in that trial. Because obviously that was some time ago in the 90s. But that's how Jack Daniels on the Rocks happened.
It sounds like you had so much fun doing this.
I really enjoyed doing it. You know what I really like? I mean, as a writer, I like the adventure where it takes you. I mean, I had things scripted out. I had things planned. But I have found with this, and I'm working on a second novel called A Pitch for Love, sometimes your fingers, which I think is really an adrenaline rush. My favorite thing to do in life is to write. Your fingers take you places you don't know where you're going to go. And there's twists sometimes, and you say, hey, I really like that. And sometimes I'll rewrite it and change it, but a lot of times I'll go with my gut. And but I like to write it, and this was a labor of love. So
it sounds like it took on a life of its own.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah, it really does. So, I mean, your background, I mean, you've been a sports editor.
I was sports editor and columnist for many years. Then I became Metro editor and a general columnist. I later helped run the marketing department at the Reading Eagle. There we were very involved in the community. I became president of Berks Community Television. I've hosted a whole number of shows there over the years. I now host the Mike Zielinski Show 2 or 3 times a month. I host Talking Sports and Fitness with Zeke. Back in Berks County, a lot of people know me as Zeke because of a very successful football contest we did. And I do that on the People's Chronicles, which is, they also have a YouTube channel, but it's podcast and video cast. And I'm also chairman of the Downtown Improvement District. I'm director of public relations for the Berks Jazz Fest. And I write some plays, too.
Right. So tell me a little bit more about the plays. That came, what, after writing?
Yeah, well, you know, I just thought it would kind of be cool to be a playwright. Now, I don't know if I'm a good, bad, or indifferent playwright, but I talked to a local playwright. He gave me some tips. And I wrote 3 one-act plays and a 3-act play, and I'd like to start writing a full 4-act play, too. And it's a lot different than writing a novel. I'd like to, put a spin on things and use prose and use vocabulary where obviously play is very dialogue based and tight and concise. So I'm finding that as a challenge. So, but it's fun, and this book is kind of funny. Some of the plays have a comedic element to it, but maybe about serious topics.
All right. Now, where can we find this book?
It's on all the major websites, Barnes & Noble, Amazon are the 2 biggies. My publisher, booklocker.com as well. If you go in a bookstore, it probably won't be there, but you can order it because it's part of that. So you can get it anywhere. The e-edition is only $2.99. The paperback is $14.95 plus shipping.
Okay, you have a website too, right?
Yeah, I have a website. It's authormikezielinski.com.
Okay.
Michael Zielinski. I go by Michael Zielinski as a novelist.
There you go.
I tried to sound literary.
Well, there you are.
Authormikezielinski.com.
What will we find on the website?
The website, basically more details about the book and where you can buy it, you know, but a little bit more details. You know, it's fun. I think the band members are kind of interesting. Ashley's mom is kind of interesting and stuff like that. So his brother's interesting. So I had fun with the characters. One of the things I really loved about writing sports many years was the characters. Sports, professional athletes, and I covered a lot of professional athletes, there are many characters in sports, and that's what always intrigued me. That's why I preferred being a columnist than a reporter, because I like to do personality profiles and really get into a guy. And so, and the key thing about writing fiction is you have to develop your own characters. They're not just there for you. You know, I was blessed maybe to cover for many years the greatest character of all time in Muhammad Ali. So that's what I gravitated towards. So. And I had a lot of influences from sports writers and other novelists, and I always liked the breezy read, the fun read. There's a guy you probably never heard of, Dan Jenkins, who's one of the all-time great sports writers, who's written a whole bunch of novels, most of them very funny. One of them years ago made a film, Semi-Tough. I just loved the way he wrote, and he had I loved the sense of humor. So there's a lot of humor in there, but I also think there's some page-turning dramatic elements as well. Okay,
so briefly, we just have a couple of minutes. Can you give us a teaser about the next book?
The next book is called The Pitch for Love, and this has a little bit of a sports tie-in. Here's a stretch, but he's not me. He's a newspaper columnist, and when it comes to town, the city he's in, there's a lot of crime. So they decide to make a movie about the crime. It's a movie, it's not a documentary. And he's set to interview this really flashy actress, and he's attracted to her. But he's also attracted to, he's a Little League baseball coach, hence A Pitch for Love. He's very attracted to one of the mothers of one of his players, who's a widow. But she's still in love with the ghost of her husband, so he kind of moves on from her. And not to give it away, he gets involved with this actress, and then he's kind of like toggling back and forth because of the ambiguity of the mother. And then he decides to he's going to be with the mother. But then the actress shows up at one of their playoff games, distracted by the TV cameras following her. The mother's son is beamed by a pitch. That puts a whole lot of stresses in the relationship. And so it's a funny thing. I'm probably not doing it justice. I write it better than I say it, but it's called A Pitch for Love. It'll be out early next year.
I was going to ask about that, and
Yeah.
you're on timetable with that and everything.
Yeah, I am.
Seems
You
to
know,
be
I'm
good?
just, it's in final edits. My final editor is my wife, who's a tough editor. Yeah.
Well, that's good to have her with this too, to have her as a sounding board. For
Yeah, and
this
she
as well, right?
and she was a proofreader for many years for Boscov's department stores and their advertising department, so she's very good at catching little things. Because you know, when you write your own stuff,
Yes.
sometimes you'll miss something because you've read over 100 times, and then it's funny until the finished product comes out, then it pops up and hits you in the forehead. How come I didn't see that then? So
Right.
it's good. It's always good to have a second and third set of eyes.
Yeah, it really is. So the book we're talking about is Jack Daniel's On the Rocks, and you can get it in all the usual outlets.
Barnes & Noble, Amazon,
Yep.
booklocker.com.
That's right. And then A Pitch for Love is going to be coming out in early 2017.
Yes, everything goes scheduled.
Everything
yeah,
goes
yeah,
to schedule,
yeah.
it will. And once again, the website, if you want to find out more information, you can go there too.
Yes, authormikezielinski.com.
Thank you so much for taking
Thank
time.
you, Diane. I really appreciate this.
So glad you're here.
All right, Behind the Lines.
Yes, Behind the Lines. We've got another author too, so stay with us. Welcome back to Behind the Lines. We're talking about authors, what they've written, and a little bit more about them. With us right now, we're with Patty Tingen. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. And you are a writer. You've written 3 books, and 2 of them you've won awards, but you weren't trained as a writer. And how did this start? But it started with this first book, right? He Was Never a Cat.
Yes.
All right.
That's how it started. I had this amazing cat, Knickerbocker, and he was my soulmate, and he was hilarious, and I just had all these stories about him, and I thought, I want to write these down, if for nothing more than to preserve his stories just for myself and my husband, so we'd never forget them. And my husband said, okay, yeah, you knock yourself out, go write a book. And I said, no, I'm going to do this. And then he was the one that actually said, well, if you really want to do something with it, why don't you put some of your story in there? And so then I thought, and then I believe God gave me the idea of Nick's story, my story, your story. And so each chapter is broken into those 3 parts. And I first tell stories about Nick, which again, he was hilarious. So there's a lot of funny stories in there. And then I draw a spiritual parallel and tell some of my testimony. And then the 3rd part is for the reader to look at that for themselves. So each chapter teaches a little life lesson. Yeah. So it just came together and people loved it.
Here
so
it is,
I was
yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I wrote a book.
So what year was this in, Pat?
That was 2010.
2010. And then how did you promote this?
Started out just with friends and family from church. Several years prior to that, I had started doing some speaking at my church, which was also very unexpected, but God had given me some things to say based on my life experiences and some difficult things that I had gone through. And I found that, again, it was very well received, and people found hope and encouragement in my words and being an example that God can see us through some difficult things, and got a lot of feedback of, wow, you know, if you can go through this, if you can do this, so can I. So I had a lot of material that I already had that I could put in the book. So obviously a lot of friends at church was like, oh, I want a copy. So did that, and then started out doing some things online a little bit, and then also started going to some vendor shows and selling the book that way. And that was just really fun to meet people and talk to them and hear some of their stories. And so especially people who love cats are drawn to Nick's picture, and they see their own cats in him, and they'll say, oh, he looks just like Boofy, or oh, he looks just like Tiger, let me show you. And they'll show me pictures. And my favorite story of that was 2 ladies, and the one said, oh, he looks just like Bob. And the other lady says, well, Bob is orange. And she said, well, I know, but he looks just like him. So I think people just identify with him. And so, yeah, so I promoted the book that way.
So where can they get this now? From your website, or?
They can get it at Amazon or any sites online. My website has links to the different online sites where it is. They can get them from me directly, and there's contact information on the site. all of the books are also at the Moravian Church gift shop in Lidditz.
Okay.
And a couple of the books are at Paul Print Gifts in Lidditz, and my kid's book is at Aaron's Books in Lidditz. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, the second book you wrote was this one, right?
Yes.
A God for All Seasons, Inspiration and Reflection for All Times. Tell me how this came about. And this is an award-winning book, too.
Yes.
What did it win?
Yes, I won several awards for that. I won a silver medal from Reader's Favorite, which is an international competition, so I was very proud of that.
Okay.
And in writing that, I joined an online writers group, and so I met people from all over the world.
Wow.
And got a lot of feedback from folks far more experienced and talented than I am or was, and they really helped me polish that book up. And that was exciting. And so now I have friends
everywhere.
And some of them bought the book. And so, yeah, so that was just amazing.
So the basis
so
for this
that book is based on Ecclesiastes 3, where there's a time and season for everything. And it's kind of like a devotional. Each chapter is a month of the year, starting with December and winter. And I go through the seasons and again share some of my testimony and the difficulties that my husband and I went through. We had a lot of financial difficulty, some deaths. We had the death of our cat Knickerbocker, and just some other things that were hitting us all at once. My husband had trouble finding a job, and so often we feel like we're never going to get out of winter. But what God showed me, in worship one day listening to a song called Faithful by Chris Tomlin, I felt like I saw this timeline of my life. All the good and the bad, the ups and downs. But right through the center of it was God's faithfulness. And I thought, He is faithful in every season. He is with me. And I thought, He is a God for all seasons. So that book has been really encouraging to people going through difficult times, no matter what they are, because we all have various struggles. They're different, but there's some similarities.
It seems like you really write from your heart. Is that accurate?
Yes, I would say that. Yeah. Again, just based on experiences that I've been through, and God has just blessed me unexpectedly with words of hope that I can share with people. And so one of the themes that God has given me is that we all have purpose. And that theme has carried through all of the books. And another is that, especially with my teaching at church, several people have commented that I'm able to explain some profound truths in a simple way. And I thought, that's me. I'm simple and profound at the same time.
And I think this book is that too.
And the kids' book, yes.
And what is the purpose of this? You got an award for this too, right?
Yes. I got a bronze medal from Reader's Favorite for that. And this book, A Cat Named Mouse, is a little bullying story. And Mouse wants a best friend, and he tries to make friends with the dog next door, and the dog teases him because of his name. Right. And then he meets a little mouse named Cheese, and Cheese discovers that the dog has a secret, and his name is Cat. So that's why he's got his own issues going on. So then the tables are turned, and Mouse gets some revenge. But in the end, they get to be friends.
And it's valuable lessons that you bring out in here.
Right. And what really amazed me was, again, this was a gal that I met online. I think she's from some country in Europe. I don't even know. She's from somewhere else. Let's say it that way. But she had reviewed the book for me and gave me a review on Amazon. And one of the things that she said was, it's a simple story with a profound message. And I thought, oh my gosh, there are those two exact words again, simple and profound. And so it just reinforced to me that God uses us, and that whatever message, He's given us each unique messages, and that message comes through and shines through no matter what we do. And I never expect the kids' book. I just thought it was a fun story that I got inspired to write, but it ended up having a very similar theme, and so it's all just been an amazing journey.
That's what I was going to say. It is a journey, and the journey may very well continue, as we started to talk about off camera before we started recording, correct?
Right.
Who knows what the next phase will be?
Right.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I never would have thought that I'd have done any of this.
Right.
So it's just, it's fun.
And it's been,
adventure.
I bet you've learned a lot too, as you were saying, interactions with people and the way you've touched people through these different books that they can relate to.
Right. As I say, I do a lot of vendor shows, and it's just fun to meet people, and even if people don't buy the books, just to talk to them, and often people feel comfortable with sharing their stories with me and some of the difficulties. And we never know. We're so quick to judge people by appearances, and you just look, and in an instant you make some sort of snap judgment, and we're wrong. We don't know what people might be going through, and often people come up to my table, and especially they'll look at the Nick book, and maybe they've lost a cat or something. They'll just have tears in their eyes, or The God for All Seasons, and they'll tell me about some of their story and some difficulties, and maybe they're fighting a cancer diagnosis, or they're going through a divorce, or whatever it might be, and my books are able to give them hope, and there's nothing better than that.
The way you connect people with your books are really great, because you touch people on so many different levels through these different stories, narratives that you put together. So I could say you really have found a calling with this too, haven't you?
Thank you. I think I have, yeah.
What we're going to do, we're going to put her website up on the screen again too, so that way we can find out where you can get your books, you can find out more about you and what you've written, and also we can probably find out what may be going on in the future with more writings too. So thank you so much for coming in and for sharing what you're doing and the impact that you're having with your books.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be right back after this. Thank you so much for joining us today on Behind the Lines. We hope you've enjoyed meeting these two different authors, finding out about their books, their journey to writing, different stories that they've told, and the impact that they can have in each of our lives, and where you can find out more about them and about their books. Thank you for joining me. I'm Diane Dayton with Behind the Lines, reminding you to keep looking behind the lines. You might be surprised what you find.